pursuit of greatness begins at first light.
For many years, the future of open-wheel racing ran through the masters of Formula 3. Some of the top drivers in the sport in the past and of today have won in this event in the real world. Drivers such as David Coulthard, Takuma Sato, Lewis Hamilton, Nico Hulkenberg, and Valtteri Bottas have all found their way to victory lane in this race. Today, the Major Series looks to see who can add their name to that list. Hello everyone and welcome to the virtual circuit Zolder for the third race of the Major Series European Regions Pro Split season. It's the Masters of Formula 3 live on the Global Sim Racing channel. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside the booth today is Peter Mackay along with Christian Challoner. Behind the scenes is our director Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Now, this race facility hosted the Masters of Formula 3 for 2 seasons in 2007 and 2008. Let's learn more about our venue today with our GSRC track guide.
Welcome to Zolder, a temporary home for the Belgian Grand Prix in the 70s and 80s. In present day, it's mainly used for GT and lower-level formula racing. The track sits in the northeast corner of the country near Hasselt, nestled right up against the Albert Canal. The two raceable layouts are essentially the same, save for the tightness of the Jackie Ick chicane. Both are just under 2.5 miles and have 10 turns. While the track had some sadly infamous moments for Formula 1, it remains a popular venue. Its most notable feature is the plethora of chicanes that scatter the lap. The slowdown penalties drivers receive for cutting the course at them can tend to be race-defining. But more worrisome are the monstrously large curbs parked at the apexes that have been known to tear apart wings and suspensions. Passing tends to be difficult, with only 2 spots offering out-braking zones that aren't into chicanes. The Boulderberg hairpin is the easier of the two, while Erst is a medium-speed, downhill, off-camber 90-degree turn. To say it proves troublesome to get right, even when not in a battle, is an understatement. While the lap opens up with many of those swift, wide-radius corners, the rest of the turns are almost all hard braking zones. High-powered cars with little downforce do need to be careful between the Kleine chicane and Butte, because there's a large crest that can catch you out. Winning here will require precision and patience. Belgian fans may have the more famous Spa to choose from, but you can't go wrong with the consistently good action this track puts forward.
That was looking at your GSRC track guide for today's action for the Major Series at Circuit Zolder. Now let's bring our first broadcast partner for today, Peter Mackay, as we get ready to go racing here at this facility as we celebrate the 2008 edition of this event for the Masters of Formula 3.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you guys in the booth today, Justin, and we're here at Zolder, a circuit which kind of lives a little bit in the shadows of its sister circuit over at Spa in Belgium, but Zolder is a real cracker, really technical parkland circuit, opened in 1961, and actually when it held the Masters of F3 for those 2 seasons, it took over from Zandvoort. Now, not only are Zolder and Zandvoort not all that far away from each other, of course Belgium and the Netherlands are neighbouring countries, but they are actually designed by the same designer, John Hugenholtz, who also designed Suzuka, and that's quite a good CV of circuits to have Zolder, Zandvoort and Suzuka. So the drivers have got to be careful today though for that Klein chicane right in the middle of the lap. It was put in there in 1972 to slow down the F1 cars which came here in 1973. So watch for action there, because you will see drivers trying to overtake there, but getting it done clean, very difficult indeed.
It's going to be a very interesting race as a result here today. Drivers turning lap times 1 minute and 21 seconds throughout practice, but so far, the point standings have been very interesting to say the very least. Let's take a look at your driver standings for the Pro Division starting things. 2 for 2 so far on victories after winning the 1987 Daytona 500 for the Major Series European region. Dallas Pataska is second in the points, 11 behind. Peter Rod, Sam Harper, George Gruber, along with Ross Banfield, your top 5 of the point standings, separated by 25 points. In the Sportsman Division, Mike Gaunt comes into today as that division's leader, with Sean Brown, Troy Anderson, Kyle Apsey, and Mark Day among the top 5, as well as a 4-way tie for 5th position overall. That's 11 points behind Amon, Fike, Boomstra, Salmonson, and Banfield for that position. Then, when it comes to the legend standings, this is among some of the oldest drivers in the series. David Baker, Richie Hearn, Rob Gall are among your top 3, separated by 7 points. Bob Beltrami is 10 points behind in 4th. Claude Belval rounds out the top 5, 12 points behind. There's also the sport standings for the Legends drivers entering today, where Andy Banfield leads that side of the standings. That's over a 3-way tie for second between Crow, Brony, and Thorns. Wolf Dietrich Hotho is in third, with Colin Ward and Scott Kukas rounding out the top 5 in the Legends sport standings. Now, Christian, want to bring you in as we look towards the team standings and what has been some intriguing action so far on that side of the bracket.
Yeah, no surprises to see the 2 Grizzly TFR teams locking out the top 2 spots. Slight advantage to the Daytona team over Le Mans by just 6 points. As I say, not too surprising after especially what we saw at Daytona, where they kind of really dominated that race. The Bombshell Racing team, not too far behind them, just 16 points back, with Kinetic Europe Pro 33 points off the lead, and Dog Bear Europe 52 points back after only 2 rounds.
That also includes, don't forget, the sport team standings as well, where Missed Apex F1 Podcast Team 1 had some great speed, Christian.
Yeah, those guys have obviously got the lead right now, but only by a really tiny margin over the Hanson Brothers Racing team, just 3 points behind, so that's almost the equivalent tie as we saw in the pro team standings. HW Racing a little bit further back with 34 points back, and then Missed Apex F1 Podcast Team B, not Team 1 this time, 44 points off the lead, with Black Tree Race Crew 52 back in 5th.
Let's look at your standings for our drivers and teams for today's action. Let's take the opportunity to look at your race details for today, Peter, and it's going to be an interesting one since it is a massive field of 42 drivers plus who are taking part in today's action. These drivers will have an interesting twist for today's format.
That they will, yes. They'll have a 15-lap qualifying race. The grid for that race will be set by a 4-lap qualifying dash, and then 15-lap qualifying race, which sets the grid for the 28-lap feature. Now, what's quite interesting is that points will only be offered out for the 28-lap feature. So everything before is all about just getting yourself in the best possible position. And as we discussed, with such a big field, you really don't want to be starting deep in the pack for many reasons. One, the overtaking opportunities aren't all that prevalent here at Zolder, and also the chances of drivers crashing on cold tires early on in the race is quite high as well. So you don't want to be caught up in that mess. So really, qualifying and the qualifying race is going to be very important indeed.
Now, the driver you just seen, by the way, was Tim Glassens. He is your top driver in practice so far with the 121.581 with about a minute to go remaining, Christian. here at this racetrack. 86 degrees the track temp, 65 the air temp for today, Fahrenheit. Winds gusting at about 6 miles an hour. That's in Celsius. 30 degrees track temp, 18 degrees air temp for today with the clear blue skies. 9 kilometers an hour, the wind gusting to the west. That shouldn't be surprised to see the speed from Tim, as he's been quick in each of the cars so far this season. He's got that advantage over Pete Haran and Dallas Pataska by about a 10.
Yeah, no surprises at all, really, to see Tim out front. But the big thing I would say is, okay, so you've got quite a few attempts at qualifying, but there is a significant warm-up kind of behavior with these tires. So I don't actually expect that we're going to see a lot of people setting their best lap on their first lap, which is a little bit of a help to them, because you get obviously the cider lap in before you get to have a proper go at it, which is nice. But it does also mean there's potentially one less lap in qualifying, and obviously with how close the field is, I mean, pretty much a 10th and a half covering the top 4 right now. It doesn't take a big mistake, especially in a car such as this, which is so heavily momentum based, to really just completely be a disaster for you. And obviously we talked a little bit about how only the feature race, I should say, has the points attached to it. So the sprint race, you don't want to start in the middle of the pack for that. You want to obviously be as far forward as you can, so the initial qualifying is important. But then the sprint is even more important, just in a sense of not being involved in an incident, because even if you think you can pass one car per lap, if you have to start at the very back, there's no way you're getting to the front.
Drivers are now all set to go for qualifying. Again, 10 minutes, 4 total laps for the drivers. It's going to be sole qualifying for these competitors to set the grid for the sprint race, which will then determine your grid for the feature for today. So drivers going to have the interesting challenge of making sure they know those optimized times and temperatures for today. As we take a look at one of the top drivers in the practice session, it was Nicholas Rasmussen, who was among your top 5 drivers, in fact, 4th quickest. What's right on board with him, in fact, in the 71. And Peter, talk us through the circuit as he makes his way around the racetrack for his warm-up.
Oh, with pleasure. Well, we're coming down now to the Gilles Villeneuve chicane. Of course, tragically, Gilles Villeneuve lost his life here in 1982, and it's a proper, well, Gilles would have been very proud of that particular sequence. Really, really fast, and you got to get the car changing direction nicely. It runs it right out to the curb. You can see also how narrow it is here at Zolder. You're right in the middle of the woodlands. Beautiful place to go racing, actually, and I believe the local frothy alcoholic beverages flow aplenty here at Zolder as well, which is always nice to have a racetrack that's there to enjoy yourself. Now, we're using the slightly fuller version of the Jackie X chicane. As you can see there is one version of it where you can kind of pass straight through, but that will give a bit of an opportunity for a one last dive going into there. So we're going down into turn 1, Erst, right now, very, very fast in a single-seater racing car, blind entry as well, so very, very challenging indeed. And then through to the Canal Bocht through here, and then over towards Lucien Bianchi Bocht as well, which I'm not overly familiar with the Flemish language, but I presume Bocht means bend. But this is the spot of the circuit the drivers have got to be super careful about. It's the Klein chicane. And now this is interesting that Nicholas Rasmussen isn't actually attempting to set a flying lap here. He's actually still warming up the tyres, which is really interesting indeed. I have to say, I mean, Christian, I don't think I've ever seen that before, a driver actually using their first flying lap as still another tyre warming lap.
Yeah, I did suspect that we might see that a little bit, and I've been watching a couple of other guys throughout the field. A lot of people had issues at the final corner before starting the lap, and a couple of other drivers had issues actually when they got down to the first turn, just losing the rear end of the car. So definitely tyre warm-up is tricky for them, and I think that's going to play a factor in the race starts as well. I think that's actually going to probably be the cause of any chaos that we might see.
Taking a look at Cameron Danson, he's one of the drivers coming over today, Christian, from the international split, as this is the first wildcard round in the major series for 2021, which allows drivers the opportunity, if they choose so, to race in the various different events. There's, of course, the Masters of Formula 3 today. They raced in about 2 hours for the international split, and there's the Long Beach Grand Prix coming up for the American split later on today. So this is allowing a few different drivers from various different regions to take part and see how they compete here today. Cameron Dance among those competitors.
Yeah, and obviously Cameron Dance, we know, is very, very strong in the international region, and every time we do the final season shootout, he's pretty much always the guy to beat. So I'm interested to see what he can do here today. And the other thing with these wildcard rounds, which is really cool to me, is we don't get to see strategy before each race, if that makes sense. So normally when all the regions are at the same track, same event, we kind of, the international is really kind of the short straw because they have to run first and there's no kind of prior information, and the European and then the Americas region can kind of base off of those races as to what the optimal strategy is. Whereas with the wildcard rounds, we don't have that. So everybody's really blind, and I think that's actually kind of cool.
Absolutely. It makes things very intriguing and brings almost a bit of a real-world flavor to some of the preparation where, yes, you have some ability to work in simulators, but outside of potential practice time, if there is practice at the facility itself, it's about racing. And we're seeing that today where times are coming in. Tim Klassen's currently the top time with a 122.4. Peter Rod, a 123.8 is second, or rather, I should say a 122.6 for Ross Banfield second. Andrei Rechkovic, a 122.689, rounds out the top three at the moment. Again, 42 drivers here to take times at the moment.
I think we'll see, basically, I think we'll be looking right to the very last lap for these drivers to set their very fastest times. Pete Herod coming over the line, 123.1 for him. That puts him to... He has gone up to 20. Well, he's now 24th, actually, so he's gone backwards.
Yeah, just not the best qualifying run for one of the top drivers in practice. And when it comes to this track as well, I've been seeing as well, Christian, for a couple competitors, especially in Sector 2, they've been hitting some of the curbs in particular in some of these chicanes. How tricky is that going to be to make sure you don't hit those chicanes and potentially damage the race car?
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. Obviously, with the qualifying lap, you have to hit everything perfectly, and we've talked about the tyre warm-up, and we are expecting drivers to pretty much get faster as the session goes on, and Tim Claessens is actually doing a good job of that right now. His practice time is a 21.5, and currently he's a 21.8 in qualifying, so I suspect his last lap is probably going to be the fastest if you can hit it right. But as you say, those curbs, the car really doesn't like those curbs, and those curbs are absolutely mountainous. But you've got to get close to them, because if you don't, you're just giving up lap time. So it's huge risk-reward stuff, and it's the same with the exit curbs as well. Obviously, you can run right up to the very edge of them, but if you just trip over a little bit too far and you end up in gravel, you'll invalidate the lap, and that's obviously massively detrimental in a session such as this.
Take a look at some of the other drivers completing, in most cases, their third lap around. Most of the field has one more lap remaining. Of note, one of the drivers up towards the front of the board so far, Richie Hearn, you were keeping your eye on, Peter, in practice for today. He was one of the quickest drivers and is looking very quick today.
Absolutely, yeah. This is Richie on track right now, of course, competing for the Legends Championship as well. Richie, a former driver in the IndyCar series, in Champ Car actually in those days. And well, that was when they were the real monsters, 240 mile an hour at Indianapolis, and Richie actually a podium finisher at the Indianapolis 500. So this is much more in his wheelhouse, at the wheel of a single-seater racing car. This is his speciality of his experience from real world. It does not set a quick lap there, so that looks like Richie's qualifying run is done.
I think he actually did set a P4 run, in fact, a 122.1 crossing the stripe. What a time for Richie Hearn. That's still 3/10 off the pole time. As Dallas Bataska to the top of the board, a 121.740. And much improved is Pete Herod now for the closing stages of qualifying too. Christian was in the 20s in the first couple laps, top 5 at the end of his run.
Yeah, a couple of drivers have really kind of almost hit their optimal. I would say Dallas ran a 74 and he ran a 69 in practice, so he was almost exactly the point. Tim didn't, though. Tim obviously ran a 58 in practice, but only able to manage an 85 in qualifying. I say only, it's still P2 right now, but obviously he's going to be a little bit disappointed, I would think.
Instant time is just around noon, keep in mind, for these drivers, so there is the chance this track gets a little bit hotter for the time being, but most drivers are completing their current lap times to complete their sessions. Colin Martsoff, last driver on the board in terms of time, a 1:29.7 was his best time. Brian Barnes is the only driver who hasn't set an official time until now, a 1:24.5, has time for just one more attempt. That will be the only driver that has laps available outside of Dick Moore, as well as, right now, the 35 of Eric Antilli, who went off into the dirt trap we've seen before and tested a standing start as a result.
Yeah, a little bit of an interesting tactic there to kind of... There's a couple of drivers starting further back than I would really actually expect them to be. Colin Martsoff is one of those right now. He's all the way in the last spot, and he ran a 23.3 in practice, so he's really not had a great qualifying session. And this is really going to hurt if you don't get a good lap in here, because yes, you do have the 15-minute sprint, and that obviously isn't for points, as we've said, but it's still going to be difficult to move forwards if you're so far in the back, and obviously the further back you are, the higher the risk of being involved in something, especially in the opening couple of laps. So with such a short main race, it's going to be difficult for drivers to recover from qualifying.
Well, they do have, remember, the qualifying race coming up to determine the starting positions for tonight's main racing action, as Brian Barnes, about 10 seconds left on the board to try and improve his time. He bounced off the curbs in the Klein chicane. We'll see if he's able to improve from the 124s. A 124.518 does not bump him up on the board, and we'll see him towards the back of the field for a massive grid for tonight's qualifying race. With that, drivers are all set to go to make their way towards your starting grid for the qualifying race. Again, 15 laps up on the board. It'll be Dallas Pataska who will lead them to the green flag. Tim Klassens will start on the outside of the front row. In what was a competitive qualifying session, 1:21.740 was the pull time by Pataska. Klassens a 1:21.858. For our drivers, Nicholas Rasmussen will start in third, Richie Hearn will start in fourth, Pete Harrod, Andre Rechkovic, Ross Banfield, Sam Harper, Travis Walling, and Harrod Stradler rounded out the top 10 in the qualifying session. You'll see those drivers on the tower here, Peter.
Indeed, yeah. Starting at 11th will be Kurt Kroom, followed by Isaac Snyder, Trevor Vavrovsky, Shane Norton, and Uldis Patukilis rounding out the top 15. Riley Thompson will roll off from 16th, followed by Eric Mickey, our GT3 winner at the Daytona 2.4 hour. Dawson Brock will start from 18th, Clark Archer 19th, and Marcus Romer rounding out the top 20.
And 20th through 30th is filled with actually a lot of drivers that expected to be starting further up. Joshua Wolf, the first of those, in 21st. Neil Middleton alongside him in 22nd. Aitor Sintas Galindo in 23rd, with George Gruber as far back as 24th. Definitely expected a bit more from him. And speaking of drivers I expected a bit more from, Cameron Dance is back in 25th as well, with Cordell Colon alongside him in 26th. David Melneritz in 27th, with Dick Mueller in 28th. Josh Nowak, another driver that we've seen perform extremely well in international races, back there in 29th, with Marcus Niskanen alongside him in 30th.
31st spot went to Claude Belval, with 32nd, Travis Henderson, David H. Baker, Wayne Hutchinson, the top 34, Sakowicz 35th position, Tilly in 36th, Bob Beltrami will start 37th, Barnes, Tom Drelling, along with Brian Barney, the top 40, Bray Partridge, Colin Martsoff, the last drivers to take time, 41st and 42nd. A lot of drivers all set to go, and as you can see, the iRacing safety car is out, which means these drivers will have a rolling start to begin for this qualifying race. Peter, your keys to victory for this one, and what's expected to be a competitive one, to see how track position will fare for today's main action.
I think it's going to be about patience and keeping that car on the straight and narrow. These are very fragile racing cars, single-seater racing car. If you make contact with the wall or with another driver, you are done, and then you're going to start the feature race from the very back, and that's not what you need to do. I think, as we've talked about tyre temperature, that's going to be the big thing for those opening laps, just taking the time to let the heat come into the tyres, and the guys who are able to take the bigger risk on the colder tyres will be able to move forward, I'm sure. But you've got to think that, you know, the amount of preparation that these guys have put in over the last couple of weeks, you got to think the nerves are going to be jangling up a little bit now.
Absolutely. And Christian, what are you keeping your eye on for this qualifying race as a result here, as we're halfway through the course from the space lap?
You absolutely have to survive this race. It's going to be key to getting any points in the feature race. So I would say if you're in the middle of the pack, your only goal is to avoid any kind of smoke that you see happening in front of you, especially in turn one. We know it's going to be difficult with cold tires. We know that everybody right now is probably trying to get as much tire temperature as they possibly can. You see a couple of guys weaving around trying to build some temp, but the reality of it is the first couple of laps are just going to be so difficult. Whoever stays on the road is going to pick up a chunk of positions, and I think if you're at the front, it's actually even higher risk. You know, you've got to battle it out and try and get yourself the best possible starting position for the feature, but at the same time, the risk is so high. If you make a mistake and loop the car around, you're going to go all the way to the tail end of the line, and you're just going to ruin your whole day.
Real quick, Peter, your pick to win this qualifying race to try and secure the pole for the main race today.
I think you've got to keep an eye out for Tim Claessens. I know that might sound like an obvious choice as our championship leader, but this is in effect a local race for him, so he'll know the circuit very well. Watch out for Tim Claessens in that number 451 car.
Christian, your thoughts?
I'm going to go with Dallas Pataska. I know it's easy to pick the pole sitter, but he's pretty good in these open wheel cars.
We're about to find out how those picks go for today's qualifying race as the iRacing safety car is off. Dallas Pataska on the right side, Tim Claessens on the left side. Green flag is out. We're underway for the qualifying race for the Masters of Formula 3.
Fantastic start there from Dallas Pataska as they fly into turn one, blind, cold tires. Oh, you must feel like you're on your tiptoes through there, but the drivers showing great respect to one another through there. Absolutely fantastic. Just what we like to say here in the Major Series.
Just about the entire field got there cleanly except for Tom Drailing and a couple hours at the back, and just as they say that, Dallas Pataska to the inside wall. Several other cars slam inside the tire barrier as they crash in the mid-pack.
Yeah, huge stack-up happening on the backstretch now. We knew that cold tires would be a problem, but I didn't expect that we'd see it there. I thought we'd get to the chicane before we saw a big incident.
That is a majority of the field wrecked, as it's Richie Hearn who is now the race leader.
Fantastic stuff there from Richie Hearn, showing really good eyes-up driving to avoid all of the chaos. But Dallas Pataska just showing, as we see, I think that's Rasmussen or Harrod going to the front actually as well. Goes past Richie, coming out of the Gilles Villeneuve chicane. Good move.
Your front row is now off the racetrack and in the pit lane with tows. Tim Claessens had spun around in the Glein chicane. That's how Richie Hearn took the race lead. Now Pete Herron looks to lead a crazy first lap of this qualified race. Rajkovic is in third, Ross Banfield up to fourth, and Stradler rounds out the top five. What a crazy start to this one.
Absolutely crazy. Well, let's get a look at the replay then and try and dissect what happened. It all kicked off from Dallas Pataska making that mistake coming out of Lucien Bianchi bend. So here he is. He's got a strong lead here, about 6 car lengths. Now, does he hit the curb on the inside? Oh, I tell you what, Christian, I mean, you'll spot it easier than me. I didn't really even spot any kind of mistake there. Just let go on him.
Yeah, I think what it probably was that he got through the first couple of corners thinking he was okay, and then pushed it just a little bit too much. He saw the left rear dip into the gravel, but I don't think that's actually what sent him around. I think he was just got in there a little bit too hot generally, and the car was already actually going around before he actually hit the apex. So just really unfortunate, and obviously we knew it was going to be a lot of risk on that first lap, and he'd already built a pretty decent lead.
There are already at least 13 drivers in the pit lane. Eric Mickey just joined that list as he crashed into the pit lane without a back tire. Up at the front, though, it's Pete Herod who will now pass by these drivers in your race lead still. take a look at all of these cars. Some of them have already went off and away. There is a faster pair available, but this is going to be massive shakeups for the point standings with the majority of your front runners in the standings involved in the trouble early.
Absolutely huge for the championship implications as well. Just here, Richie Hearn using all the road and more there in the 70 car, but wow, huge implications. Cameron Dance as well involved in that early pile-up as well. So, well, I tell you what, guys, if we can speak selfishly for a second, we're going to have a heck of a feature race with so many big names starting right at the back, and they are surely going to make their way through the pack.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be great to see them drive through from the back, and we already had a lot of guys starting kind of further back than I thought they would be. Obviously, Cameron Dance was one of those, but didn't make it past the first lap.
Up towards the front, though. Let's follow along with Ross Banfield, though. He's now making the pressure closer for these drivers. Run a 1:24.1 last time by. 1/10 quicker than Andrei Rechkovic. Started in 7th position.
Yeah, good, very quick pace this early on in the race for Ross Banfield, and right in the hunt for a very strong finish here, which put him in a really good position for the feature race. Now, I tell you what, guys, that just showed exactly what. Oh, Isaac Snyder's had a spin at the just out of Boulderberg there. But it just shows you if you're back in the pack, you are so at risk, and just loses it on the brakes.
Nearly ran over the back end of Stradler, in fact, trying to hit the brakes there. That was really close there, as Snyder ended up having to wait for several seconds. Is now all the way back in 22nd position as a result of that mistake. But another mistake in front of him. That is Melnirwich, who spins around and hits the Elmcall barrier, so one more car just had a mistake. So several more drivers are having opportunities to gain positions back here as a result here. This has been a crazy start to this event.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of what we were maybe thinking that we might see a little bit of, obviously with the cold tires and whatnot. But even out on lap 3, we're still seeing drivers struggle with it. And we've got a couple of guys who are just who've made huge moves up through the field. Actually, right now we've got Cordell Colon in 13th after starting in 26th.
He was one of the drivers who made it on through to the trouble as Riley Thompson, one of the independents in this series, looking to make a move for 7th. To the inside, looking to pass by Udas Puteklis. Puteklis, though, with a better run in the kinetic racing machine.
Puteklis just shutting the door there. I tell you what, I thought Riley Thompson had that move done, and Puteklis went nope and just shoved the door in his nose. Wow, that is brilliant racing, and nope, not even a whiff of contact there. Fantastic.
Fastest laps still being turned up towards the front of the 122s as Thompson now looking to the left side of the racetrack in turn 1. Near side by side once again with the left side tires as Puteklis has the preferred line. Thompson taking the long way around. Again for 7th position this is battling for. Looking like, though, Puteklis again going to be able to keep that preferred line throughout the section of the racetrack all the way to the chicanes.
Oh, here they go. Who's going to be the boldest on the brakes here? They're playing chicken with one another into the Klein chicane. Riley Thompson, very clever, just backs out of it. Just says, no, I want to keep in this race. We've seen enough cars wrecked out. It's not worth it sometimes. And I tell you what, brilliant eyes up stuff there from Riley Thompson, actually. Not just to back out of that one when he needed to.
This all allowed Tim Claessens, who is a lap down, among the drivers into the scrap a little bit here. We'll see how they handle the lap car. They also have Clark Archer coming from behind for position. The 9th spot for the number 3 machine. For Archer was starting in 19th. Keep in mind that it was 16th place Riley Thompson started. Puteklis 15th. Again, Tim Claessens is in 29th position. I don't think he's wanted to play a factor in this fight.
Yeah, I doubt it, but he has to kind of keep going because obviously there's the chance that other guys ahead of him are going to crash out, and he needs the highest possible starting position he can get right here to really recover from what has been a pretty dreadful start for him.
Meanwhile, up towards the front, Pete Haran still among your fastest drivers. The fastest lap went to Ross Banfield, a 1:22.6 among your top 4 so far. They've separated out by a couple seconds or so from the rest of the pack. But it is a shrinking lead in Sector 1 in particular. Richie Hearn's been really good in that section. Peter Haran's been good in Sector 3 so far, Peter.
Yeah, their lap times are very closely matched. Pete Harrod just 0.2 of a second quicker than Richie last time around. But yeah, it definitely seems to be that there's different parts of the circuit where they're stronger. So if they get closer on track, let's see if that plays a factor. But great to see Richie running up the front here. You can tell that he's at home in that in a proper single-seater racing car.
This has been one of his best runs this season so far, Christian, to say the very least. He's had some ups and downs in the first couple rounds, and today, looking very comfortable.
Yeah, we know that Richie's obviously extremely capable as a driver, and we normally see him perform very, very well whenever we go to Indianapolis. I wonder why that might be. But again, it seems like he's managing to make it work as well in a comparatively low-power F3 car, and I think everybody in the top 5 right now is actually probably quite content to just stay where they're at. Obviously, such high risk in passing. If there's any kind of contact, the car really just folds up. So you got to be really, really careful and assertive if you do make a move, because you do not want to lock wheels with somebody, because it's going to end your race.
Keep in mind, Peter, of course, Heat Haran, a former champion for the European region. Richie Hearn, of course, looking for his first majors victory in this series. As we'll see how things break down throughout the day. Again, in good position for qualifying. Track position P7, meanwhile, still is tight. Riley Thompson still not able to get by Protectless. Got the quickest lap, in fact, last time by a 1:22.618.
Yeah, you got these guys are on such a similar pace. You got to think that Riley may be just getting a tiny bit of little bit of aerodynamic slipstream benefit and able to set the quick laps. But it shows you that these guys are operating on a really, really high level. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the drivers up the front in that top 4, they're more than happy to sit where they are, because they've got really strong grid positions. Of course, there's absolutely no points for this race. It's all about the feature. So it's all about that risk reward, and there's maybe too much risk before the reward. But that would put Richie Hearn and Pete Harrod on the front row of the grid. Now, we do know that when Richie had his podium at Indianapolis, he told me how he listened to Shania Twain on the radio in his car on the way to the track. So maybe he's been listening to Shania Twain this morning before this race.
Interesting. Interesting.
There you go.
Either way, we are just past halfway in the qualifying race, and still, Pete Haran has continuously been reeled in slowly but surely by Richie Hearn. It's down to 4/10, make it 3/10 now. The gap for the race lead.
It's definitely coming down, and I think Richie's probably going to want to have a go at this if Pete makes another slight mistake. It looked like Pete was a little bit out of shape into the first chicane there, and that's allowed Richie to close up even further. But it's quite difficult to pass in these cars. You do need a significant overlap, and you've got to be extremely brave on the brakes, and we've already seen it throughout the field where passing is difficult. It's just not really something that you can do, as Riley Thompson is trying to show us how he gets past the 666, and he's been trying this for pretty much half the race at this point and been unable to do it. Every time he gets alongside, he just doesn't actually have the correct position. Aldous is able to out-drag him on the straightaway, and Riley just can't stay alongside him into the next corner to have a move on the brakes.
It almost seemed with that little cutback move there, Peter, you're almost getting a little bit frustrated at this point, Riley Thompson. He's going back side by side again in Sector 1. Not able to get quite fully side by side this time with Puteklis. Just seems the frustration is starting to build up for Thompson.
Yeah, Puteklis showing very, very good racecraft here, just placing the car where he needs to, but giving the safe room where it's allowed. Riley Thompson really showing a wheel here, showing his intent. They run through brilliant stuff, but they've slowed one another up, because look, here comes Archer in that kind of space shuttle paint scheme machine. Now they're going in through almost 3 together. Oh, now look at that. So Archer actually splits them up, and Puteklis goes, "Thank you very much, good night, Zolder."
And now looking to pull off and away as Thompson tries to attack back. Near contact as Clark Archer able to clear on by Foley for 8th position. And Riley Thompson now has lost nearly 2 seconds just about, and as a result here, as well as Archer to Puteklis. Puteklis is now broken away to the inside again. Thompson for position. Turns 8 and 9. Once again, Thompson, though, able to get the edge on the V-Apex machine.
Yeah, Riley looks like he's got a car that's very, very lap time capable, but looks like it just might be a little bit heavy on downforce and in turn drag, because he's just struggling so much to actually complete passes and able to get it done there on Clark Archer. But he's got to get back to Aldous and try and take this spot again. And this is the thing, with it being such a momentum car, if you're having a fight with somebody and it slows you down, you can end up in that situation that we saw with Riley there, where Clark Archer had so much more speed, he was just able to breeze by him with ease, just because he was able to carry momentum through the corner and Riley wasn't.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, Ross Banfield continuing to set fast lap times in the UDOX machine, still holding on to the draft for the battle for third position, I should say, with Andrei Rechkovic. Been looking really quick as well in terms of those lap times you were talking about, Christian, but each time he's gone to this range has lost a little bit of ground, doesn't turn the fast lap, and the next lap he sets the purple lap, it seems. That's been the trend.
Yeah, and it's obviously extremely high risk reward at this point. He's in P4 with 6 to go. He's got a good chance of scoring even a race win in the feature, and obviously the maximum points that come with that. So you really do have to kind of weigh up whether it's worth taking that one extra position. You know, like if there was the opportunity to start on pole in the feature, then maybe it's worth it. But right now, one spot to start third, I don't know. I think it's too high risk.
I think Andrei Rechkovic actually scraped the wall there, by the way, with the right side tires. So that was interesting there, and no damage from Rechkovic, it appears, on the 99 machine. Meanwhile, Handsome Pete still holding on with under 5 laps to go. And is starting to grow this lead back on forward. Was about a couple tenths slower than Richie Hearn last time on the stopwatch, but gained a couple tenths on the racetrack overall. He's been really smooth, especially in the chicanes, and that's where he's been able to get this pole in this sector onward.
Yeah, it's just sort of yo-yoing back and forward between these two guys. They've both got their own part of the circuit where they've got a happier hunting ground. But I tell you what, this has been a really, really solid drive here from Pete Harrod, because I mean, I wouldn't want to have Richie Hearn lingering in my mirrors with a purple lap time as well. I mean, he's really been super composed under pressure, and would deserve the feature race pole, because it's just been so consistent.
Indeed. Who else has stood out to you, Christian, so far in this race so far with how things have shaken out?
Well, I'm not too surprised that we see Ross Banfield and Travis Walling in 4th and 5th, because I know from racing against Travis Walling in the Americas region that he's an extremely fast driver, especially in anything that's open wheel. So to see him up in the top 5 isn't too surprising. I was a little bit surprised that he qualified 9th, that he wasn't a little bit higher up. But just looking through drivers who've kind of recovered from the, I would say, bad qualifying, Josh Nowak is up from 29th and 12th, so he's another driver that kind of looking at. Travis Henderson as well, back in 16th, but started in 32nd. So just kind of keeping your car clean and not making mistakes has been proven to be a very, very good strategy in this race.
Yeah, keeping the car clean and staying out of a big one coming out of turn 4 is definitely a great strategy, as we've seen play out. Remember, there were 13 plus drivers involved in incidents in Sector 2 on the first lap alone. But drivers either clipping the sand or sliding into a massive crash into the tire barrier on the right side of the racetrack. Still, Josh Nowak riding 13th. Up towards the front. Rechkovic still holding on to 3rd position with 3 laps to go. They've lost the tow, though, at the top 2 by about a couple seconds now.
Yeah, I think that the top 2 really pushing on. Richie Hearn really pushing the pace, and Pete Harrod able to give an answer to it every single time, and that in doing so they've kind of pushed each other on and broke away from the second pair. Great lap there from Pete Harrod, 122.3, 0.3 of a second quicker than Richie Hearn, and with 3 laps to go, that's really important. But wow, Riley Thompson, you think he's driving angry, guys? 122.1, goodness me.
Couple incidents starting to break down. Isaac Snyder has broken a tire, as well as another crash in the middle of the racetrack. That is Trevor Bobrovsky involved in this one. Ended up having to dodge Joshua Wolf and Colin Martzoff. Let's take a look at the Martzoff-Wolf incident that sparked this stoppage on the track. Contact coming through turn 8.
Yeah, pretty significant kind of defense right there, which checked everybody up, and then everybody got together at the exit, and somebody unfortunately lost a wheel there. I'm not sure who it was, but 2 out of the 3 cars involved in that incident are definitely out of this race.
That's pretty clumsy with 3 laps to go in a non-point scoring race, I have to say. I hate to sound overly critical, but yeah, it does seem a little bit, it just seems a little bit sloppy there.
Trevor Borowski still trying to come around the racetrack with the damage, still scored inside the top positions in 21st. Meanwhile, Thompson has caught back up to protect Liz. Was side by side going through turns 8 and 9, working his way for the Jackie Xbox this time as Thompson looking to make a lunge with 2 to go.
Yeah, I feel like he's going to have to do a massive send to pull this off, but this is interesting to see how strong Riley Thompson's actually been in terms of pace over the first couple of races of the season, I would say. Obviously, we talked about him a lot at Daytona. He was really strong in the 87 car, unfortunately. Was permanently 4 to 5 laps down for the entirety of the race, which really meant that he didn't get the points that he probably deserved. But again here, he's got great pace. He's just not quite able to get all the points that he should get from the pace, I would say. Like right now, he's setting the fastest laps. He should be fighting for this race win. He shouldn't really, well, I say back here in 8th spot, but he really shouldn't be back in 8th spot as he goes for the move, and he might finally get this done.
Backs off the brakes, however, not going to make the move this time as they are still now 4 seconds away from the next position on back. They have pulled away by 4 seconds from Clark Archer. And why do you feel it can be so difficult here, Christian, to make this type of move for this pass, even though it's just the 2 cars here?
It's really down to the car and how momentum-based it is, because it's such a low-power car, and it's got a relatively high amount of downforce for what it is. So you have to carry as much as you can at corner exit, because that's really where all the lap time comes from.
Yeah.
So if you have to compromise the line even a little bit, you lose a lot of time in doing so, and I think that's why it's so difficult to pass in this car.
That's now seen the white flag, by the way, this time by as Handsome Pete looking to secure the qualifying race victory. He's led every single lap. Richie Hearn has been inside the top 3 since Sector 2, Lap 1. Andre Rechkovic still holding on to 3rd. Ross Banfield in 4th at the moment. A impressive run so far for Pete, where he has been dominant so far and has kept that clean air.
This has been a mighty impressive drive. We have not seen him put a tyre wrong. Really, really impressive, and sets himself up perfectly for an assault at the feature race win. But he'll start along on the front row of the grid alongside Richie Hearn. And we saw how good actually Pete Harrod was on that kind of cold tyre opening lap. He really was able to put a move early and move to that lead, and he's been absolutely metronomic since.
Dominant race from Handsome Pete Haran with experience in various different championships. The Major Series European Pro Champion, the Season 7 champion for the WGTC, and now he wins the qualifying race to secure the pole for the Masters of Formula 3 for today's Major Series event. Richie Hearn in 2nd, Rajkovic, Ross Banfield round out the top 4. Travis Worling did reel in under 5 seconds or so to the race leaders in the closing stages. Stradler, Puteklis, Thompson, Archer, Neil Middleton with a quiet top 10 as the rest of the field comes across the stripe. Overall, 23 drivers will finish on the lead lap, Christian. What was an eventful one, especially that first part of the race?
Yeah, high amount of attrition there, I would say, for sure. Obviously, 23 drivers finishing on the lead lap, but remember, 42 cars started the race, so almost half the field with issue. 13 drivers essentially out of the race on the first lap, and I think you're going to see a lot of guys going for pretty much a recovery drive at this point in the feature.
Indeed. The rest of the drivers currently making their way around the racetrack. As you can see, a couple of them are in the midst of trying to battle a little bit for the final positions. Vrosky and Brian Barney will be the final 2 drivers who will come across the stripe in this qualifying race on the lead lap. Overall, about 37 drivers or so will finish this race. The rest of the field will finish inside the garage area. Ray Partridge among the DNFs. Dick Muller, Eric Mickey also did not finish due to earlier incidents. Of note, Cameron Dance 1 lap down in 30th. Unfortunate for the championship leader for the international region. That brings us into warm-up action now for the next 5 minutes or so in preparation for this action. Again, this was all to set the starting order, Peter, for the main racing action, and now the points are on the line for 28 laps. A lot to learn, let's put it that way, after some of this action.
Indeed, yeah. I think, unfortunately, for Dallas Pataska, a lot of the field have learned a lesson at his expense, showing that you really have to be super careful on those cold tires. But the thing is that there's always going to be a driver who will go to make the difference. That's the thing, is it's a risk and reward, isn't it? That's what makes it so fascinating to watch. And I think that's what Pete Harrod did there, was that we saw Richie making his way through to the lead when Dallas Pataska crashed, but it didn't take long for Pete Harrod, while the tyres were still cold, to pull a move on Richie and go into the lead, and he held that lead the whole time, as we saw. So I think it's those opening lap or two is just going to be really, really critical in this race. And of course, as we said, that track position is vitally important.
A lot to talk about, but we'll take a quick step aside. When we come back, it'll be main racing actions for the Master of Formula 3. Who will be the master of today's race? We're going to find out here on the Global Sim Racing Channel. Charity for today's racing action for the Masters of Formula 3 is Fight Colorectal Cancer. To donate, go to fightcolorectalcancer.org to support today's charity for the Major Series European region. Back at the Zolder circuit for today's action and what's been some intense racing to say the very least, and some crazy moments after an intense qualifying race. Justin Prince, Peter McKay, Christian Chowder with you with Sean Ambrose in the director's seat as we're all set to go racing once more for 28 laps to see who will be the master of Formula 3 today here at Circuit Zolder. It's going to be an interesting one to say the very least here, Christian, to see which team and which drivers come out on top.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, a lot of drivers going to have to recover from pretty poor sprint race performances. Most of those came down to wrecks rather than actually lack of pace. So we've got a lot of drivers towards the back of the field who are going to be watching, trying to get through. Hopefully they survive the first lap this time. They didn't in the sprint race, but would be good if they did, because they'll put on a hell of a show if they do.
All the drivers have made their way towards the starting grid for today's action. Behind the iRacing safety car will be Pete Perron, who will bring them to the green flag after an eventful qualifying race, with Richie Hearn to his outside, Brejkovic, Banfield, row 2, Warling and Stradler will be row 3, Protectless Thompson, row 4, Archer Middleton, row 5. A quiet run for Neil Middleton to secure that top 10, Peter. An impressive run for him, as you'll see your drivers on your pylon for their starting positions here today.
Indeed, Ater Santos Galindo will start on row 6 alongside Sam Harper from the Missed Apex F1 podcast. Josh Noak will start 13th, followed by Marcus Romer, Cordell Colon, Travis Henderson, George Gruber, Cloud Belleville, Magic Sakovic and Marcus Niskanen will round out the top 20.
Lining up in 21st, one of the organisers of the series, Wayne Hutchison, alongside him, Trevor Vavorowski. We saw him have some late race contact that set him back a little bit. Brian Barney started all the way back in 40th. He's going to start this race in 23rd, though, with Tim Clayson's started on the front row, had that early incident, starting back in 24th. We're going to have to watch out for him. Dawson Brock alongside him in next row back in 25th. Nicholas Rasmussen, another driver who started in the top 3, is going to be in 26th. Isaac Snyder, we saw have an incident. He's going to be in 27th. Dallas Pataska, the pole sitter, spun out of turn 3. He's back in 28th. Shane Norton and Cameron Dance round out the top 30.
Rest the drivers towards the back of the field. Keep an eye on David Monwernich, as well as Baker, Drailing, Brian Barnes, Colin Martsoff, Joshua Wolf, Bob Beltrami, and Tilly, Crum, Partridge, Moeller, and Mickey will also be starting towards the back for this one as drivers make their way throughout Sector 2. How have the keys to victory, in your opinion, now changed for this one, Peter, after what was an eventful qualifying race, and knowing a majority of your front runners in the point standings are now having to work from the 20s?
Well, they're going to have to throw caution to the wind. They don't have time for patience. They're going to have to push through the field and push through quickly, because the pace is pretty hot at the front. As we saw in practice and qualifying, there was a kind of group of 6 or 7 all on very similar pace at the front. A lot of those guys are still at the front, so we're going to be in for a thriller here. Make no mistake about that.
Christian, your thoughts here as these drivers make their way through Sector 3?
I would say it's the same as it was for the sprint race, only kind of even more importantly so this time with it paying out points. So survived that first lap. We saw a lot of drivers who did survive the first lap, went on to have some great races and gained a lot of positions. Likewise, we saw drivers at the front who spun on the first lap and now really in recovery mode. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here, because we have got a lot of fast cars starting 20th on back.
All the drivers getting ready and warming up their tires for what's expected to be an interesting 28-lap main race today for the Masters of Formula 3. It's Team Matt's Pete Heron in control of the field. A great launch as we take the green flag from Circuit Zolder.
Brejkovic there trying to get a jump there on Richie Hearn in second, but a brilliant start from Pete Harrod, and hits the front, and you can see a bit of a wiggle for the drivers coming through turn 1. It's very, very fast through there, using all the aero grip you possibly can, but you've got to let those hand-cooked tyres come in and bring the heat in. And of course we're coming up to the Lucien Bianchi bend, where of course Dallas Pataska came to. Whoa, it's Pete Harrod. How did he hang on to that? And we've got a spinner.
And it's in the middle of the pack yet again. This time it's Judas Pateklis. He's off the racetrack as the rest of the drivers slide to the back of the field. That was Neil Middleton along with Shane Norton also having trouble. The rest of the leaders getting through nice and cleanly to start off Sector 2. Richie Hearn holding on to second, Rajkovic holding on to third, Banfield, Whirling and Strander holding on to their positions, +2 for Archer, along with Harper and several others as a result of the trouble. Of note, Wayne Hutchinson also having trouble in the mid-pack. The rest of the drivers got through nice and cleanly, the top 3 looking to break away. Should be also worth noting that Rasmussen, one of the top qualifiers for the qualifying race, has lost just about every single piece of his chassis as a result of trouble. He was in 26th position before his incident in the 71 machine, so several big incidents on the first lap. But it's the Team Mad Machine who holds on to the race lead by 0.4 of a second after the first lap.
Brilliant start there from Peter Harrod. Well, with the slight exception of a little bit of using all the room and more on the exit of the Jules Bianchi bend, and actually did really, really well to not have his own spin there. He was all 4 wheels into the gravel, and just did really well to keep that car under control, and can now settle into his rhythm a little bit more. He's got a gap of about 4 or 5 tenths of a second there, so just let those tyres come up to temperature, get ready for this. It's a long race, 28 laps around Zolder. It's a long way, and to run consistently for that length of time is not easy.
Of note, more drivers have had incidents. Claude Belval has now lost the tire. Cameron Dance is trying to make his way to the pit lane in now 36th position. Overall, 37th on back was involved in the big one to start off this feature race today. But Hanson Pete, keep in mind, lots of experience when it comes to the sim, as talked about, has been racing since all the way from the Grand Prix 1 days in the sim racing community, a karting racer since the early 2000s, in fact, as well. Let's take a look at what happened with the incident involving Putekolis that started up what was Big One Part 2.
Yeah, a couple less drivers involved this time around, but Aldous looked like he just got up on the inside curb and it really unsettled him, and then after that he was kind of a passenger. I'm not sure how he lost the right rear. I don't know if maybe there was a little bit of contact that we didn't quite see there, but turn 3 has been surprisingly difficult as we got a little bit more contact.
This is what happened to the 71 machine, by the way, and why he's now scored 41st. First bit of contact, looks okay-ish with a bit of front wing damage, possibly with car slowing down, and then 3 wide into the chicane's not the best of situations, and triggers this.
Yeah, you see there his right rear is completely off the car, and really disappointing end to the day for Rasmussen. Obviously very, very fast, and has just unfortunately got nothing out of it, having issues in both races.
He's already now taken the fast repair. In fact, he's pulled off the racetrack. He's done for the day. Tim Claessens, of note, is also now done for the day. He's now had trouble with scored 34th position. Joshua Wolf has also had some trouble, so some more trouble for some of your top championship runners. Let's take a look at what happened. This is going to have a major shakeup. This is your points leader, Tim Claessens, who will have trouble here. This was just moments ago that seen him pull off the racetrack. Take a look at that in just a moment as Hanson Pete, keep in mind, is leading by 0.6 of a second.
Yeah, it looks like the front pair have really broken away quite a bit. Already a 2-second gap back from Richie Hearn to Andrei Ruvkovic in 3rd place. And oh, big contact there for Tim Claessens. That was obviously what we were looking for. There wasn't a great deal he could do about that one. And oh, yeah, that's day done for Tim. A disastrous day for our winner at Daytona, don't forget. But Pete Harrod doing a good job right now, 0.5 of the second ahead of Richie Hearn. And then Rajkovic, well, he's got to worry about Banfield from behind. And I tell you what, guys, if Banfield can get by here, we know how much pace he's got underneath that car.
Yeah, we really have just kind of continuation of the battles that were started in the sprint race. It's all the same guys fighting each other. At the front, it's Harrod versus Hearn, and behind them, Rajkovic versus Banfield. So I wonder if everybody's going to get a bit more aggressive now. Obviously, points is still a big deal, and this is the points-paying race. But you kind of can't wait at this point, you know? You followed a guy around for half the race. Like, you got to go for it. You got to try and get the position.
And he's going for it now. Ross Banfield to the inside and Jackie Ixbach. Not able to complete the move, forced to back off for the second part of the chicane. Down the front stretch he goes, trying to get the pole now. And keep in mind, it's been difficult to try and run side by side in Sector 1 for the entire grouping to try and get that position. Banfield backs up and they have now lost an additional second plus as a result of this fight.
It's amazing when you watch there. You see a driver go up the inside at turn 1 and you think, oh, he's got it here. And the driver on the outside can really hook it in there, and the grip that these cars have is just amazing. Of course, they're so lightweight, great aerodynamics as well, and as Christian's saying, real momentum cars. And Rajkovic there was able to defend basically just by hooking it out on the outside and keeping a really high corner speed. Interesting to see there. So drivers who want to get those moves done, they're going to have to effectively make a block pass and lose momentum.
Now keep in mind that fighting has also allowed Stradler and Thompson into their wake. They also have Warling, who is just behind these drivers as well, 6.8 seconds behind the leader. Let's take a look from Riley Thompson. As you can tell, he's been later braking compared to these drivers, and it's been working for him, Christian, to be able to gain a little bit of time for Sector 3 here.
Yeah, Riley started 8th, and this race is already up to 6th, so gaining 2 spots, and actually managed to get past Travis Walling, who started in 5th, who's back there in 7th. So Riley, again, having a really good race. Obviously, we've seen him have already some battles today, so he's got probably a bit more experience in car-to-car than most drivers out here. I suspect he's going to look to the inside of Stadler down into 1, but it's a difficult pass to pull off because it's such a late apex. Stadler actually looks like he just really lets him go there.
Well, when you set the purple time, that might have been a factor. A 1:23 flat from Thompson. Let on go. He's now +3 in the race so far, as we see how much momentum is carried with these drivers as well in the chassis for now. Though Thompson having to close up 1 second. P9 also starting to heat up a little bit. 3 drivers in a train. See the separation, just 3/10, Peter, among these drivers. This train currently about 2 seconds behind Clark Archer.
Indeed, yeah, and you got to think maybe at this stage of the race, if it depends how you feel, how quick the driver in front is. If you feel you're on similar pace, maybe better to hold station and try and move forward, because as soon as you start battling, we've seen it so many times, you're losing multiple seconds. Just the time just disappears, and so does your rival up the road as well. Now, I have to say, I like this. A bit of a David Coulthard tribute helmet there for Sam Harper, of course. Scotsman in the 52 car, and of course David Coulthard, a former winner of the F3 Masters.
In fact, the first one, I believe.
It was called the Marlborough Masters at that point. I think Alan McNish actually raced in it as well.
I believe so, yes. Keep in mind, this is a tribute back to 2008, which was a star-studded field. Keep in mind, you also, of course, a lot of talent made their way through this event in real life, Peter.
Indeed, yeah. It's this is, and the thing about F3 is as well is that now, really, it's a kind of single mate category. Really, the Dallara is so good that well, this is what it would be like. And whoa, and Eric Mickey has had an issue, and I wonder, has he had a clash with his teammate here? Possibly. No. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear.
Yeah.
Oh, Eric Mickey running into the back of
Isaac Snyder, I believe it was, the ran the gravel with him. So that's going to be an interesting conversation in the post-race.
These are 2 bombshell racing team machines. There was a fight for position taking place with one teammate. One backs off, the other right into the left side tires and into the sand trap. They both go with significant damage. Mickey is now out of the race.
Oh dear. Well, I'm sure that will be discussed at length. Of course, Eric Mickey, our GT3 category race winner at the Daytona 2.4 hours, our opening round of the major series. So it's not been a good day here at Zolder for Eric, but Rajkovic and Banfield still battling away. Last time around, Banfield 0.3 of a second quicker. Banfield actually on actually a 10th quicker than the leader last time around. In fact, Richie Hearn was quickest last time around, 1:23.2. So you can tell the drivers just bedding themselves in a little bit more gently this race. It's a much longer race, of course, have to carry more fuel, and we should see those lap times tumble as the fuel burns off.
And that's so critical, Christian, because, of course, the lighter the car, the quicker you go, and the handling is also going to be very different. But at the same time, you underfuel that car too much. It puts you in a spot where you're not going to be able to make it on fuel to the end.
Yeah, I think with obviously there being no in-race cautions in this race, I think everybody should be safe on fuel. but at the same time, yeah, you do get faster as the fuel burns off. It's such a lightweight car. The fuel is a considerable percentage of the overall vehicle weight, so for sure they're really going to be at the best at the end of the race. But I think by lap 8, everybody should be pretty happy in terms of tires. Everybody should be up where they need to be. So I think we're kind of going to see some guys settling in. At this point, though, I think Banfield needs to really get on with this and try and get this pass pulled off, because Riley Thompson is here. He's in this grouping now, and we've seen that he's not going to wait.
Absolutely. We've seen how some of his moves have fared so far. It's just a matter of how he gets the job done here. It could take a couple laps to close in fully. He was about a tenth slower than Ross Banfield last time by. Meanwhile, more trouble, as this is Brian Barney in the 55 who's had some trouble. This is in Sector 2 in the Klein chicane, believe.
Oh dear, well,
Passed it, in fact.
Of course, he's running the American Space Shuttle. Whoa! American Space Shuttle colors there, and yeah, Houston, we have a problem.
One car spins around. He loses a tire as you see that tire come to rest right next to the tire barriers at the very edge of the racetrack. Now it's in the pit lane as a result of damage. The V-Apex Racing Group Europe machine in the pit lane. By the way, that is Claude Belval. That is also with them now there too as well. Meanwhile, the battle for the P3, looking to make the move, is Ross Banfield up the inside, side by side, but once again, Rajkovic able to defend. Loses them an error, a couple tenths though to the race leaders.
You see Riley Thompson there, able to get a run as well after everybody head checking up, looking to the outside of Banfield now, and now it's Banfield under threat, and this is the problem with trying to make a pass in these cars. If you don't pull it off, and everybody's kind of stacked up as a group, you're immediately vulnerable because you're carrying so much less exit speed, and I'm kind of surprised that Riley Thompson wasn't able to really take advantage there, but now it's going to be difficult for him because Banfield's now aware that Thompson is close enough to really make something happen if he makes another mistake.
Incredible lap there from Pete Harrod last time around, 123.0, 7/10 of a second quicker than all of the other leading group. Absolutely exceptional, and look at the gap now, 1.7 seconds at the top of the pack.
Yeah, Handsome Pete's taken off and away, and Riley Thompson looking to take off to the right side of Ross Banfield for position. Good run out of the Klein chicane, up the inside, taking a peek. Not able to get the move once again, in our tight corner once more, not able to get to the inside up.
Just looks like he's just got too much downforce on the car. He's got the lap time in the car, but he's finding it very difficult. He's actually doing a big send up the inside here. This might be his opportunity. Banfield's got a pretty good exit here, and he's going to have the inside for the last chicane, but looks like he's giving it up and allowing Thompson through.
Yeah, I think that again is just the thought process of why battle so hard that we hold each other up at this point, right, Peter?
Absolutely, I think that's exactly what Banfield is thinking. He's thinking there's no point trying to. I think he can probably see. Of course, they're running so close together. He'll be able to see how good Riley's car is in the corners and how good his is on the straights. And he's probably thinking, right, Riley's probably just that tiny bit better on lap time and stick in there and hook in behind him. Very clever, actually, I would say there from Banfield. And he's got time to do it. We're only just gone past 1/3 base distance.
Of note, Sam Harper has now moved up to 9th position, side by side for 10th position. And the Kinetic Racing Machine looking to make the move for 10th position. Just Nowak, side by side with Cynthia's Galindo. Now heading off into the Klein chicane, lets him go. And makes contact with him, in fact, as he cuts the chicane.
And that's kind of what we're talking about a little bit with the block pass there. Josh obviously had to get very, very heavy on the brakes, had to almost park as he got to the curb, and unfortunately for Galindo, they're just not able really to avoid that and got into the back of it pretty hard.
Yeah, I thought he was actually trying to let him go, and when I think they went to go and break into the braking zone, just that bit of contact when they went to the inside of the chicane.
Yeah, it just shows you with these cars, they're pretty fragile. Just a little bit of contact and it can have a pretty dramatic impact, as well as Pete Harrod still laying on the fast laps at the top, 122.8. So now into those 122s, and now 122.6 for Riley Thompson. So Riley Thompson, there you go. As soon as Riley Thompson can get in clean air, he is the fastest guy on the racetrack. But as Christian, as you said, how far car. He's got a brilliant qualifying car, but maybe not a good race car.
Yeah, it looks extremely difficult for him to pass. Like, every time he pulls out, when he has a big run on the corner exit, he loses out. Like, going down the straightaways every single time. I've been watching from the chopper cam a lot, and he'll have a ton of exit speed. He'll go to make the pass, and his advantage immediately just drops away. So he's definitely got more wing on than a lot of the guys he's racing against, and it's making passes really difficult for him. Yes, he's got a very quick car, but it's not easy for him to make progress, and that's really the trade-off you make in something like this. You can trim the wings off and have something that's not as fast, but it's going to be easier to race with, or you can have a car with a lot of lap time in it, but it's more difficult to make passes with just because it's not as slippery.
By the way, Dallas Pataska as well as that 11 machine both came in for damage to the 11 because the contact we've seen before in the chicane. As well, Dallas Pataska had been running with front wing damage for several laps, so both of them have had repairs done. Fast repair from the 11 machine. Dallas Pataska, a manual wing change. Dallas Pataska, 28th position at the moment. So we're falling on board still with a battle for third position. Thompson continuing to set great lap times. See if he can try and get the run on Rajkovic soon. Meanwhile, in the mid-pack, Marcus Niskanen among the drivers trying to hold off Trevor Bobrovsky and Kurt Krum at the moment. A couple drivers who were involved in some of the trouble in the qualifying race.
Interesting as well that Riley Thompson is going so quick that Banfield has actually not been able to hang on to him at all. We thought Banfield really had a lot of pace, and Riley Thompson's just hit the afterburners, and Banfield hasn't been able to hang on to his coattails.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising to see that, actually, obviously with these cars being kind of almost draft locked in a sense, that not being able to hang on to somebody. As we saw a big incident there at the chicane. I'm not sure who that was, but it was actually just about to bring up that Kurt Crumwood started in 39th and was up in 18th, but that might have been him going across the chicane there, so we'll have to check that.
That was Trevor Bobrovsky going across the chicane. Meanwhile, it's side by side. Thompson able to make the move on the right side of the racetrack, upon by Rajkovic, making it look easy. And now it's the question, can Thompson get up to the race leaders with 15 laps to go?
Wow, he is really on a charge, is Riley Thompson. I think now we're really going to see what he's trying, that's for sure. Wow, I think we're now going to see just how good Riley Thompson is in clean air, and how much of a fast car he's got in the corners. He's just got to try and not get mugged back here by Rajkovic as they head down. There's a reasonable straight here down towards the Klein chicane. Can Rajkovic get close enough? No, not quite. So every corner, look at the corner speed that Riley Thompson's able to pull there.
He's so much better on the brakes. That's a huge advantage he's got there. So if he can get alongside someone into a braking zone, the pass it's not done, but it's not going to be too tricky for him, I don't think. But the issue is he has to be there, and that's what he's been struggling with. And actually, kind of surprised that Rajkovic gave that up to him as easily as he did. But obviously, Riley Thompson very, very fast right now.
All right, closing a couple tenths on the race leaders. Of note, change for 6th position. Warling and Stradler swap spots. More trouble going on for 14th. Sakowicz Cologne now in a bit of trouble. That's allowed Niskanen, Krum, and several others to go on by. Those cars have now crashed. Let's take a look at the GSRC replay on why, as you can see. Overcook in the corner.
Oh, unlucky. That's so unlucky. It's the 50 car there. It's just so gutting when there's nothing you could possibly do. Is trying to give room and then mistake in front. That's racing, as they say.
Significant damage added to those drivers. Both of them have already made their way for a tow to the pit lane as a result. Currently 35 cars or so are on the track, so speaking of that battle we were talking about, Niskanen and Krum are still within 0.6 of a second at the moment. They're now battling for 14th and 15th position. Travis Henderson is 3 seconds up the road.
And Kurt Krum wasn't actually the driver that I was expecting to make such a strong charge from the back, but he's up in the top 15 at this point, which is just absolutely crazy. And he's only 15 laps into the race as well. He might even be able to sneak a top 10 out of this.
An impressive run for the Bombshell Racing Team machine, and it's going to be interesting, Peter, how the team standings shake out, keep in mind, for today, because so many teams have had some ups and downs today, but for the most part, some of the teams have been able to have consistent moves, especially to the mid-pack so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we saw there with the Bombshell with the teammates clashing with one another. It was that's not what you want. It's strength in numbers is what you need. As Riley Thompson lays in another fast lap, 122.5. So Riley has about 3 seconds to catch up to Richie Hearn in second place right now, but lapping 0.6 of a second quicker on that last lap. So you'd think that by the end of this race, if they keep going the way they're going, Riley Thompson could get back onto Richie Hearn, and he's not absolutely out of a drive for the win. And that, well, what a story that would be.
It would be a massive story indeed, and you have to give credit still to the drivers holding on to the top 5 here, Christian. Rejkovic and Banfield both have been looking very solid today. Keep in mind, Banfield was among your quickest drivers too in the qualifying race. Meanwhile, battle for position, Stick Miller making a move for 21st position with Colin Martzoff. Let's take a look at how this broke down.
Yeah, you see Mueller on his outside there coming out of the final corner. Just got a really good run, actually. Surprised he was able to get to Martzoff's left rear at the exit of that corner, but then made the pass quite easy for him into turn 1 there. But really good move to get the position he needed to actually facilitate the pass.
Again, for him so far, it's a plus 20. Remember, 41st starting position after a really rough qualifying race was among the drivers involved in the first lap incident in that respective race. Oh, by the way, up towards the front, Riley Thompson, he's now almost 4 seconds behind your race leader and is approaching the slipstream of Richie Hearn. And that's going to be the tough part, is when he gets to those cars at this rate, Peter, is trying to actually pass. That's been the struggle for Thompson.
That is true. Yeah, we have seen that, but you got to think that he's really feeling good right now. It's all about momentum. Of course, there's so much of racing is in between the ears. It's all in the mind, and you got to think that he's absolutely on a charge, in the groove right now, and he's probably just seeing his lap time delta. He's probably racing his lap time delta on his steering wheel there, just thinking, right, we're really in the slot here, and he can see Richie Hearn up ahead, and that's going to be giving him some even further motivation. But once he gets up to Richie, passing him is going to be tricky. But whatever happens, this has been an absolutely superb performance from Riley Thompson.
It's now under 4 seconds, in fact, to 3.7 seconds this time by continuing to set purple lap times. This has been an absolutely stellar drive. Rainbow Nair 122.6, fastest lap time of 122.4 set by him last time by, with 11 laps to go.
Yeah, I think this is really going to come down to how easily he can pass Richie Hearn, because I think it's almost inevitable, really, if he gets up to him. But the key to this is he's obviously so much faster than pretty much anybody else on track right now. That's really clear. I think we can all agree on that Riley is the fastest car right now. But you have to really use that advantage, because if he gets to the back of Richie and he can't pass him, for like 4 or 5 laps or even more laps than that, then you lose the advantage, because you kind of end up with passing the advantage to the defender, because the defender looks at it and goes, hey, I've kept him behind for 4 or 5 laps. What's another 4 or 5 laps more, right? Whereas if you get to him and you immediately make the pass, the momentum is so much with you. So for Riley, it's going to come down to how easily he can pass Richie. And if he can do it at the first attempt, I think he's got a chance of winning this race.
Keep in mind, with 10 laps to go, lap traffic is ahead for those drivers. Ross Banfield, meanwhile, wants to get ahead of Rajkovic. Has not been able to make a move in both the qualifying race and today's main action yet. Not able to make the move in the final chicane once more as he tries to get the slipstream into Erst. To the left side once again, tries to set it hard. Rajkovic on the defense, still has the preferred line for turns 2 and 3.
Now, what's interesting here for our Bazzars, they see a brilliant battle here between Rajkovic and Oh dear. And Banfield going side by side through the opening section. This is really, really tight stuff. But, and oh, they're going now side by side down towards the Klein chicane. And you see Warling here has got a perfect view of all of this. And Banfield goes by at the Klein chicane. Great move. And oh, look, he gets a little wobble over the curb. And Rajkovic hangs it up around the outside. He's going to have the inside then for Gilles Villeneuve chicane. Side by side they go. Oh, this is oh, massive wreck. Oh no. Oh no.
And a battle that has been stewing for about 25 plus laps leads to this. Massive contact that started with the battle from the qualifying race and now leads to this. Major contact in the chicane, sees hard contact with the tires for two of the drivers who have been in the top 5 the entire day.
Yeah, massively disappointing for those guys right there. But that's the danger with the second chicane. Just because you've got that switchback in the middle, it's not really possible to go too wide through there. And it was just a little mistake. It wasn't even really an aggressive defense or anything like that. It was just a slight mistake to overshoot. And unfortunately, both of those guys completely out of this race.
Strader also broke his chassis trying to avoid that incident, but the race lead is coming down and fast. The top 3 separate now by just about 2 seconds. Richie Hearn is within a second now of Pete. Now Thompson is within 1 second just about of Richie Hearn.
Indeed, yeah, I've just been watching this the last couple of laps. So Riley Thompson is by far the fastest of all 3, but Richie has been pulling time out of Pete Harrod as well. So they are all just going to merge together here. Oh, we're going to get an absolute grandstand finish here in the Majors Series, the F3 Masters. This is going to be a real thriller. And tell you what, Pete Harrod, he's been in the only guy in the 123s the last few laps. Both Richie Hearn and Riley Thompson have been in the 22s. So maybe you got to think that Pete Harrod, he's maybe getting a little bit fatigued because he has spent this entire race meet out front.
At the same time, Christian, he's had the ability as a result, especially of pulling away by more than a second, to just run nice and calm since he's got the clean air.
Yeah, I think it's hard to bet against him. Obviously, he is the leader, and he put on such a good show in the sprint race. I got to feel like he's got more in his pocket than he's showing, but now is kind of the time to go, you know, like everybody's closing him down. You don't want to let people get close, because if you let them get close, you give them hope that they can make that pass. So if you've got pace, you need to kind of show it at this point. You need to pull out half a second in a lap and it be really clear that you're not going to get run down. And I think now's the time for him to do that. So we'll have to see if he can.
Thompson's progression is slowed down a little bit. Keep in mind now that he's within the draft of Richie Hearn, and this is what we were just talking about, Peter, is once he got up here, it's going to be difficult to make the move, especially with some of that dirty air that he's now going to have to deal with. Bit of trouble behind him. Sam Harper from the top 5 has spun around.
Oh, what a pity there for the Scotsman at the Klein chicane. I wonder if he's maybe just missed his braking point. Let's have a look. So down he's on his own, and oh, rallycross over the... Oh dear, that's going to damage the bottom of the car, surely. Bit of damage limitation for Sam Harper. Here we go. Oh, pogo stick. Oh dear. Gee whiz.
A couple drivers did that in qualifying too, Christian.
Yeah, and that's the thing we were talking about with qualifying. With you've got to be close and aggressive with the curbs, but you got to not run over them, because obviously that's the risk.
Meanwhile, Marcus Niskanen's now had some trouble. We're hearing in the 47. He is now off the circuit as a result. I believe it might be technical issues, unfortunately, for Niskanen from the top 10. Fortunate for him. But speaking of the top runners, Thompson now within about 4/10 up towards the front. We should be worth noting Riley Thompson looking to try and make the move now on the 70 machine.
I'll tell you what, guys, I think this could be critical for Pete Harrod. If he'll be looking in his mirror now and he'll be thinking, perfect, because Riley Thompson's going to have to work hard to get past Richie Hearn here. But as we've said so many times, making that move is just a lap time killer. And with 7 laps to go, with 6 when we go over the stripe, this could be perfectly timed for Pete Harrod, because any battling at all between Hearn and Thompson, well, he'll get a little bit of grace.
It needs to be aggressive. The pass has to be aggressive. I know it's probably not what Richie will want, but it's got to be, because if Riley doesn't get this pass done realistically within the next 2 laps, I don't think he's got a chance to win this race. So he's got to get a good run, and he's just got to, if there's even a chance, he's got to send it.
It's interesting, you see there in the draft, actually, just even with Riley Thompson in the draft, Richie Hearn pulling away on the straight there, guys.
Yeah, keep in mind that there is traffic ahead for Pete. Wayne Hutchinson, Bob Beltrami are right up the road from the race leaders. And it's going to be interesting how the traffic plays a factor here, Christian, now in these closing stages coming to 5 to go.
Yeah, and obviously aero wash is a thing, and it's not really what Pete needs, but at the same time he's got that battle happening behind him, which is going to help him out just a little bit. Lap car's getting out of his way quite nicely, but not going to get out of the way for the battle for second, so that's going to help out Pete, actually. It could have gone against him, instead it's actually worked out in his favor.
Traffic right in front of Richie Hearn helps Riley Thompson, though, close up a little bit. Now within a couple car lengths to try and make the move.
He's got to send it. He has to send it. Like, this is his chance right now.
Richie Hearn, though, went massively defensive to the inside. Thompson now having to regroup. They lost a few tenths from that block. Now Thompson to the left side. Looking to the Jackie Hicks corner. Able to make the move. Richie Hearn gives it to him.
I think the race win could be on here. I think now that he's got five to go, and he's got the car to run Pete down, I think he can do this.
Wow, tell you what, really good move there from Riley Thompson. Just didn't rush it. You know, Richie Hearn defended very nicely into the Boulderberg hairpin, but then just got the run up to Jackie X, very, very nice, and got the move done clean. As you can see, Bob Beltrami moving over there. Really good respect there, and you can just see through every corner. Riley has just got such an advantage in corner speed. This is, for any MotoGP fans watching, this is a Jorge Lorenzo style, just massive corner speed.
Bit of a club with the right side turtle, so that time for Thompson coming out of the Klein chicane, making his way over towards the Turn 7 complex once again. 2.5, the gap still between these drivers, 4 laps to decide it. Thompson gains another half a tenth this time. And this has been the strength right here, the braking zone. He's been setting it much deeper, as talked about throughout the day, Christian. That time, though, not able to gain too much time. In fact, Handsome Pete gaining some time on the corner exit.
Yeah, this is what I was wondering, whether Pete was kind of just sort of rolling up there, waiting to kind of pull the trigger on the pace that he has. Riley is still closing him down, but Pete just kind of needs to just slow the rate of closure just a little bit, just to reduce and kind of run the laps out, really. Obviously, with 4 to go, 1.1 second the gap as Riley just goes completely across the gravel and somehow keeps his foot in it. Loses the 2 tenths he gained on entry, but somehow zero sum really right there. But it's going to come down to if Pete makes a mistake, I think. If Pete makes a mistake and loses, say, 4 tenths of a second or something in that region, then Riley's going to have a chance. But if Pete can, even if he's only losing 2 tenths a lap, it's still going to be very, very difficult for Riley to make anything happen here.
Well, he lost half a second last time around. It's amazing the pace that Riley Thompson's got up his sleeve here. And I tell you what, there are a lot of bogeys in the form of lap traffic that Pete Harrod is going to have to manoeuvre. But I tell you what, guys, if he can come through from this test, Pete Harrod, well, it's a shame that he wouldn't get any more points. But I mean, to double win here would just be amazing achievement under so much pressure.
This is going to be intense for the next 3 laps. Traffic is still ahead. Keep in mind, Tom Drelling is up the road. 1.4 seconds, still the gap for the final 3 laps. And the 21st position car up the road, now giving a bit of dirty air. This is currently the closest lap traffic. The rest of the drivers, or at least a few seconds more up the road, are not expected to be a factor for this closing stages for the race win. Now down to 1.1 seconds as Thompson closed it up 3 tenths that sector.
Riley's very, very strong through turn 1, especially when he doesn't end up running out into the gravel, so he's just got to get a little bit closer, but he is going to start getting affected by the aero wash of Pete when he gets probably within about 1 second, so we'll just have to see if he can close up that gap. Before we get into the last 2 laps, I'd just like to point out that Kurt Crum is now actually inside the top 10 from 39th, so that's a pretty amazing drive, it has to be said.
Able to keep the car clean from 39th position. In fact, catching up to Marcus Roman for position. Has a chance to gain one more spot here in these closing stages. But Robbie Thompson wants to gain the all-valuable first position. It's down to under a second. Lap traffic is ahead in the corner. 2 laps to go this time as the lap traffic moves to the right side of the racetrack. Thompson picks up the slipstream for the lap car. Down to 0.8 of a second. Now we'll have to deal with the lap traffic into the corner likely, as this is going to affect the battle for the race lead.
That said, that's not particularly good etiquette there from that lap car. Made it a lot easier for Harrod to go through than Riley Thompson there, I have to say.
Yeah, I don't think it's had actually any impact on the time delta though, so still kind of just around that 1 second point with 2 laps to go.
Now down to 1 second still. It was down to, remember, 0.7 before that moment. That was a lot of time gained though in Sector 1 on the braking zone in Ernst, and working their way through Cadell, now working their way through Klein. Thompson has been so smooth here throughout the day, minimal mistakes. No mistake there, getting another 0.2 to be able to pull his way through the chicane. Keep in mind that they do have those 2 cars ahead. They are not expected to be a major factor for this battle. We'll see. Again, it's currently up the road from them. Brian Barnes, Colin Martzoff. Also worth noting that Kurt Crum is up plus 30 as your biggest mover to 9th position. White flag waiting up at the stand, coming up to the final lap here from Circuit Zolder.
Well, this is going to be a big ask for Riley Thompson. 0.8 of a second it sits right now on the live delta. There are still some lap cars to worry about. That's not what Pete Harrod wants to see. He wants to see clean air ahead, but over the stripe we go. Well, it's been a story of hard chargers, both Riley Thompson and Kurt Crum as well as Tyler Thompson. Are we going to see a 1:21 on the final lap maybe?
3/4 gained or so from Thompson to set in our purple lap for the final lap now. Thompson needs to close up 0.6 and needs to try and make this move. Working their way through the Lucien Bianchi curve once again. Traffic moving to the left side of the racetrack, not playing a factor here as they work their way through the Klein chicane for the final time. Massive send from Thompson within 2 car lengths.
He's close. He can maybe have a chance into the hairpin here. I don't think he's going to have a chance into the chicane.
Wow, the amount of time he made up on the brakes there, just incredible. Just all that aero just making a big difference, but just sheer bravery there as well as they go up over towards the Boulderberg chicane. This is going to be, well, it's going to be a big ask, but Riley Thompson really asking the question here. Whoa, big lock up there and just, oof, that could be it.
Will he be able to try and send it to the final chicane? Can he get close enough? 4 or 5 car lengths back to the final corners. Handsome Pete will hold on and take the checker flag. He wins at Circuit Zolder in the Major Series. Second goes to Thompson. Richie Hearn holds on to 3rd position to round out the podium. Travis Worley able to hold on to 4th, Clark Archer in 5th. Sam Harper, meanwhile, has recovered to 8th position, trying to hold on in front of Kurt Crum. Kurt Crum trying to make it a plus 31, going to the outside in the final corner.
Oh, brilliant racecraft there from Sam Harper, just holding off the hardest of hard chargers there. Kurt Crum, nevertheless, what a performance. Who said you can't overtake at Zolder? Wow.
What a race, to say the very least, as the rest of the field now crosses the stripe. And what a finish to this one, Christian. Handsome This group of cars now looking to close out the lead lap contender 16th, 17th, 18th this time by. Dallas Pataska recovers from a qualifying race incident to a top 18. Colin Martsoff will be the last driver in the lead lap to cross the stripe in 19th position. But man, oh man, what a race in this one, Christian.
Yeah, a lot of kind of championship contenders. Obviously, Tim Clayson's Dallas Pataska having big issues tonight, but yeah, really good race actually. A little bit skeptical, I have to say, about F3 at Zolder. I wasn't sure he was going to put on a great show, but it really did.
Absolutely. With that, we'll take a step aside. Post-race coverage coming up in just a few moments. You're watching the Major Series from the virtual Circuit Zolder. Welcome back to the Masters of Formula 3 and what was an exciting finish. Today's main action here on the Global Sim Racing channel for the Major Series in its European region for the Pro Split today. It was Handsome Pete who took the checker flag by just 0.3 of a second after a mega charge from Rowley Thompson. He started in 8th position and had to come from more than 5 seconds back after making his way to the podium positions for a shot at the race win. Richie Hearn rounded out the podium today 5.9 seconds behind, with Travis Worling in 4th position. Clark Archer rounded out the top 5. Josh Nowak in 6th position, with George Gruber in 7th. Sam Harper, Kirk Crum, Marcus Romner rounded out your top 10 today here, Peter.
Finishing in 11th place today here at Zolder was Travis Henderson, followed by David Melnarowicz, David Baker, Trevor Vavroski, and Eric Intilli rounding out the top 15. Aitor Santos Galindo was 16th, followed by Dick Muller. Dallas Pataska, championship contender. Disastrous day for Dallas after a spin from the lead in the qualifying race. Colin Martsoff was 19th, and Brian Barnes rounds out your top 20.
Tom Drayling with a decent performance there to come up 12 spots from his grid position, finishes in 21st. Ross Banfield, a driver that we saw right in the top 5 for the majority of the race, had that unfortunate incident and finishes 1 lap down in 22nd. Bob Beltrami behind him, up 14, finishes 23rd. Aldous Petkelis had an incident at the beginning of that second race and was able to recover for 24th, but it's just a case of what might have been for him. Neil Middleton, another driver who had a very strong sprint race performance, unfortunately comes home in 25th. Cameron Dance only able to recover to 26th. Dawson Brock behind him in 27th. Cordell Colon in 28th. Masik Sakowicz in 29th after starting in 19th. And Joshua Wolf rounds out the top 30.
Stradler 2 laps down in 31st position. Wayne Hutchinson 32nd. Brian Barney finishes 33rd. Ray Partridge, Marcus Niskanen, Isaac Snyder 36. Andrei Rechkovic finishes 37, 9 laps down. Belval, Mickey, Claessens, Rasmussen, and Shane Norton round out the entrants for today's action. 42 drivers took the green flag today here at Circuit Zolder. What a finish to this one, and what a drive from Riley Thompson. Riley Thompson now joins us in the broadcast booth. Riley, do you have a copy?
Yep.
Riley, first things first, you had to claw your way back from about 5+ seconds behind after moving your way inside the top 3 positions. Talk us through that drive as you had a blistering pace all day.
The main thing was just trying to learn from race 1. I wasn't really daring enough in that first race, trying to get by Otis. And so realizing, hey, I could probably pass here, I think that was a big help for this race.
What made the car so quick today, in your opinion, to be lightning fast to where you were setting purple lap times the entire race?
Honestly, I have no idea. Using Jack's set from Craig's Up Shop, it was freaking amazing. Couldn't wish for a better set, and felt like under braking, I was able to get a lot more than other people. Probably more downforce, but I think just being able to trust the car a little bit more into the braking zones was a big thing here with all the chicanes.
Of course, this is a good points haul for you too as well. How would you describe the early portion now of the season, knowing that 2 of your championship contenders up in front of you in the standings had struggles today?
I'm just gonna keep hoping it goes like this and not like Daytona, or if it does go like Daytona, then hopefully at least not being 5 laps down for the whole race.
Now the next race on the campaign goes to what's going to be an interesting one. It's a bit of a flashback almost towards the Ignite Series days, because it will be with the Tour Modifieds at New Hampshire. Your thoughts there?
That's actually, I think, one of the couple Ignite rounds that I was actually fast at, so I feel pretty good about it. The Tour mods are really fun, especially when Tyrus and Green did them, and I think that'll be some really good racing.
Anyone you want to thank for the run today?
Got to thank Total Downforce Racing, of course. Great paint schemes, great drivers, great everyone. And Jack with Craig's Help Shop for making this amazing setup.
Congratulations on the podium today, Riley.
Thank you, guys.
Riley Thompson coming home second today. Now Richie Hearn is standing by with Peter Mackay.
Richie Hearn, poacher turned gamekeeper. This is normally your job to do the post-race interviews. How did you enjoy that one?
Oh, man, that was tough. I tell you what, it feels really good. I've been in this series for about 4 or 5 years, and I think this is my first time on the podium, and it feels really good to kind of just not make a mistake and get some points for our team. And, yeah, I'm pretty stoked, sweating a little bit.
I bet. The pace looked really hot up front, and certainly neither you nor Pete didn't look like there was any mistakes being made out there. Everyone was wheel perfect.
It was tough. This car was fun to drive, but it was like driving on a damp track with slick tires. It was really easy to just overstep what you wanted to do in those chicanes. And so, honestly, I just had a pace I wanted to run. And as soon as I saw Riley catching me, I wasn't even going to risk it. And I was hoping he would catch up to Pete and they would crash or something. But no, I'm stoked. I'm pretty happy about this. Finally, they kind of put it all together.
Absolutely. No, it was a superb drive. Now, we were surmising in the commentary box, Richie, we know that you have, when you have successes out on track, you have a particular soundtrack which you listen to. Was Shania on the stereo this morning?
It was not, but I might put it on right now, that's for sure.
for a celebration. Well, Richie, while we've got you here on the Global Sim Racing channel, who would you like to give a shout out to today after your podium?
Definitely to all my teammates, not just in European, but the guys that are running the America's race tonight in the Lotus. Obviously, Simmortal helps us out. And, just putting it together as a team effort. And we try hard. We're not the super team, but we try hard. And I wish those guys luck tonight and getting some points for Elite West Racing.
Super stuff. Richie, thanks so much for coming in to chat to us, and looking forward to seeing you out there at the next round.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. You have a job, and I can't wait to watch it back.
Once again, that's Richie Hearn from third position. I'd like to thank him and Riley Thompson for joining us for post-race coverage here. On that note, I want to turn to you, Christian, first. Your final thoughts on what was an eventful finish to this one, especially to close out more than 5 seconds in that stint.
I'm honestly surprised at how good a show that was. I mean, I have to be honest and say I'm not a particularly great fan of watching lower lower powered single seaters in real life, I kind of find that the racing's a bit processional, but that was anything but. And I was really impressed by generally how good the racing was throughout the field. Obviously, it was a little bit of a struggle for a lot of drivers out there on cold tires at the beginning of the race. As Richie pointed out, it's very, very tough. But we did see some really good racing, and obviously a couple of incidents, but it was all hard racing. I don't think we saw anything out there that was kind of just bad moves. I think it was just everybody was trying to get everything they could get, and obviously Riley was able to make a really, really strong charge from 8th up to almost taking the race win. So yeah, this is a great show. I was skeptical. I've been proven wrong, and I think it was great.
It was a great race indeed, and Peter, of course, the next time these cars or these drivers hit the racetrack is going to be an interesting one too, because it'll be modified racing at New Hampshire.
Well, the only thing that's transferable is that they have 4 wheels and the wheels are open to the elements. That's about the only crossovers there's going to be. They're going to be on the oval. The Whelen Modifieds, they are incredible machines, big horsepower, and again, a bit like we had last round with the 1987 NASCAR Cup cars, there's going to be a lot of drivers that are going to have to do a lot of familiarization in the next little while to get ready for that round.
Indeed, an eventful one to say the very least today here for the Major Series. I'd like to thank you for tuning in for today's exciting action. I'd also like to remind you of today's charity, Fight Colorectal Cancer. To donate, go to fightcolorectalcancer.org to donate to the charity representing today's Major Series action. We'd also like to thank the Major Series for organizing this amazing series, as well as the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed up on screen. Additional thanks to June Law, who provides her wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks as well to the team today, and Peter, Christian, and Sean. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can check the merchandise for sale at gsrc.storyvy.com. Or you can check our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, so you don't miss a moment here on the Global Sim Racing Channel. Of course, as talked about, the Muscat 250 will be the next race for the European region. That will take place on Sunday, April the 11th at the virtual New Hampshire Motor Speedway. But the Tour Modifieds coverage starts at approximately 12:45 p.m. Eastern Time. That is 4:45 p.m. GMT. And don't forget, it's going to be the 1979 Grand Prix of Long Beach coming up with the Lotus 79s for the American region. Later on today, that will take place at approximately 7:45 p.m. Eastern Time for GSRC for pro coverage, ESPN for sportsman coverage for today. Again, to close out an eventful wild card round, the first of 2021 for the Major Series. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on screen, so be sure to check those out and mark them down in your calendar. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.